Good afternoon. It's great to be with all of you. I especially like coming to Indiana because there's so many Illinoisans over here now. I have to come and see my old friends. They've been coming for the lower taxes, the high jobs growth, great property taxes, housing values, and we're hard at work in Illinois to try to bring some of those moving vans back to the west across the border. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Lisa Nelson on her amazing leadership of ALEC. You really have done an extraordinary job, especially in very difficult times, and many of us in Illinois watch what you've done with ALEC and admire it very much. Congratulations. There's a lot of good Illinois legislators here. I saw Senator Murphy, Senator McCarter, Representative Rice is here. I know Tom Morrison is here, and a former senator, I think chair of the operation, Senator Dillard, now our RTA chairman, is also here. So really, there is no brain trust left in Illinois right now, so I'm a little worried about that. So I was a college kid long ago, and I worked in a gray iron foundry. I worked on the grinding floor, and it was a gray iron foundry that made small to medium-sized engine parts for things like lawnmowers, compressors, that sort of thing. I worked hard to get this job because it paid very well, because it was very, very hard work, and if you've ever been in a gray iron foundry, you know what I'm talking about. And I learned about worker freedom that summer in that job. I'd always been taught to produce as much as I could, and I would be rewarded. I got it into my little workstation. I had a little hand chiseler, kind of like a little mini jackhammer, and a grinding tool, and a forklift showed up with a bin full of parts. And I started grinding, I started hammering, and one by one the parts moved from my left to my right. And then the new bin came, and another batch, and then another batch, and then another batch. And I kind of looked around and thought, you know, I was a 19-year-old cocky college kid, I think I'm the fastest one here. These guys are, you know, slow walking it over there. Well. It didn't take long before the supervisor came up to me and tapped me on my shoulder, and I pulled my little ear protection away, and he said, "Slow down, just keep pace with everyone else." This was my first exposure to worker freedom, or lack thereof. And think about what that really is saying to a 19-year-old college student or somebody who may be in their 50s and 60s, whether in a private sector union or a government union. We want to cap your upside potential. We want to put a ceiling on your ambition. We want you to slow down and find the average. That is how you get ahead in this construct. That is appalling and immoral in my view. I think it's really an incredible time we are in so many ways, particularly the relationship between government unions and the taxpayers who fund their work, the taxpayers who fund their salaries, their benefits, and their pensions. You know, the left likes to talk about class warfare. The real class warfare going on in America today is unionized government workers versus private sector taxpayers who fund all those benefits. In Illinois, as an example, just to cite what's happening, government workers who work a full career are becoming millionaire retirees on the backs of the working class and poor, and the middle class and everyone else. And this is no exaggeration. An AFSCME worker working for the state of Illinois after a full career will get free health care for the rest of their life. They will have put in around $110,000 in payroll deductions, which they'll get back in their first 2 years, and another roughly in total $1.5 million in addition to Social Security. While the private sector taxpayer, an average income in Illinois of a median income of about $33,000, maxes out at $30,000 with Social Security and whatever they manage to save. That doesn't stop there. A teacher in Illinois, $133,000 put into the system, gets it back within 2 years, and will take out about $2.5 million. This is class warfare of the most unkind, unfair of all. Now, I never would say any of us should vilify the individual workers. That would be unfair and resorting to their tactics, which we do not do. Each of the workers is just trying to do the best they can for their own family, like any of us would. The people that are responsible for this are legislators, long ago and still at present. I bet there aren't very many of them that architected this in unfairness and inequity in this room, but it is legislators who created this problem. It is legislators who must fix it. And I think one of the things that Luke alluded to that I think is important for all of us to remember is we have the moral high ground on our side. They want to portray us as anti-union, and we are not. The truth is that we want to unleash the human spirit that lives within each and every one of us. We want to empower workers. We want to give them their freedom, the freedom of choice to join a union or not join a union. What we need to do now is modernize our labor construct, our labor law. We need to modernize it for the 21st century. Think about how the whole labor movement began. The labor movement began for righteous reasons. It began because in the 1800s and the early 1900s, the business owner and their managers had all the power in the relationship. Workers had very few rights and were often abused in those days. And the organizing of workers to create leverage and negotiating strength to protect individual workers was a good thing. But what has it morphed into today? Today, instead of the worker having the power, now the union and the union bosses have the power over the worker. The business owner no longer has the power. The individual doesn't have the power. The union boss has the power. What we want to do to modernize our labor construct is shift the power where it belongs to the individual worker. That is a righteous case for us, and we should make it. The kind of policies that advance worker freedom to make 21st century worker freedom real, there are many. Right to work is just one. 26 states, others coming. I'm very happy that in Illinois we're nearly surrounded now by right to work states. We think that will create some awesome pressure for us. But there's other ways to do it besides right to work. There's opt-out. Maybe some of you have heard of this opt-out. Tom McCabe and the Freedom Foundation in Washington State have done courageous, amazing work on opt-out. It's based on the results of the Harris versus Quinn case in 2014 that stopped the dues skimming scam by the SEIU from child care workers and daycare providers. Because of the great work of the Freedom Foundation, using every tool holistically available, direct mail, email, social media, television, radio, and most amazingly, door knocking. Over 26,000 doors were knocked by Tom and his team. They talked to individually 11,500 workers who were in a union against their will. Today, because of that work, 60% of child care providers have dropped their union membership by exercising their choice. That is empowering workers. The fact that it's inconvenient for the union bosses, well, that's just a little bonus, maybe the icing on the cake. Just south of here in Kentucky, 12 counties have now passed local right to work. When you can't get it done statewide, some people think local right to work is a good idea. I happen to agree with that. It's been very interesting in Kentucky. And you know what? It's amazing. Illinois has one village with local right to work. How about that? Even in strong unionized Illinois, because of the courage of Lincolnshire Mayor Liz Brandt and the City Council, they passed right to work in the face, in a small little meeting, of 500 union agitators intimidating, agitating, organizing, and threatening, and lawsuits go on today. But Liz and the rest of the town council did not back down and poked a hole, the tip of the spear, on the idea of right to work, which is propagating. There is another village where the mayor has been contacted, and a company has said, if you pass local right to work, we will move here with 2,000 jobs. 26 states, as I mentioned, have local right to work, but don't stop there. I think one of the great things about the Act 10 fight was the issue of recertification. The fun part about Act 10 is I got to, because we're just south of the border, and so many of the Democrat Wisconsin legislators helped and stimulated our economy by abandoning ship to avoid the quorum and coming down. So it was a very big issue for us, and we were very grateful for all that restaurant, and especially the bar tabs were pretty extraordinary. But I debated on many media outlets, and one of the debates was with the former mayor of Milwaukee about the merits of Act 10. And during that debate, he said something quite extraordinary. He said, well, John, if Act 10 passes, it'll be the end of unions as we know it in Wisconsin. I said, why is that? He said, well, it requires recertification every year, and the unions won't get recertified. I said, well, Mayor, let me get this right. If the workers vote to not recertify the union, isn't that them telling the union bosses that they're being served poorly and they no longer want to be organized under that union, and shouldn't that be their right? He was silent. He had no response to that. And I think this is one of the most important things to think about. Unions in their history were great advocates of voting rights for African Americans, for women, for other marginalized workers. But when it comes to their own workers and their own members, they don't want to give them the voting rights as to whether or not to recertify a union. That should tell you all you need to know about their goals and their immorality and how they treat their members. I think another final policy idea for you to consider is workers' choice. The idea here is pretty simple. Give a public sector worker a choice. Join the union and the deal negotiated by the union, or don't and make your own deal. You know, the unions always say their workers are just not capable of negotiating their own deal, yet all across America, people from all walks of life, from the kid working at McDonald's to a CEO of a company, negotiate their own deals. I think union members are quite capable of negotiating their own deals. This has the added benefit of stopping their free rider argument and, of course, solving the forced rider issue. You know, I think something that Luke said is interesting about Wisconsin. He said the ideas worked. And why does that matter? Remember that the ideas that you all fight for, and we all fight for together every day, are about changing people's lives for the better. He mentioned $2,000 per household. Some child somewhere in Wisconsin has a tutor for math. Maybe a daughter has dance lessons they didn't used to have. Maybe somebody's going to a community college they wouldn't have been able to afford before. Our policies have the amazing benefit of actually working to improve people's lives. That's what we fight for. The irony is their policies hurt people's lives over and over and over again, whether it's at the federal level or the state level. That is why, as the Mackinac video showed, what we need is courage. We need will. We need it because we want to change people's lives for the better. And you can do it because you are not taking the risk you might have in the past perceived. You can win on this issue politically, but most importantly, you can win on this issue morally by changing people's lives for the better. We are on the side of empowering workers. We are on the side of telling them the truth about their rights. We are on the side of removing the artificial ceiling on the upside potential of every worker. And we are on the side of unleashing the human spirit within each of us and championing worker freedom. So I say to you, be bold, lead, and be part of the movement to set workers free in the 21st century. Thank you.